Hey everybody, happy Monday and welcome to this week's Q&A. So as always, I will be answering a series of questions from community where people have posted, DM me, or from coaching conversations. So we will dive right in. So first question is around leads, and it says, I'm getting inbound from people that say they are executive recruiters. Should I engage with them? And so when you get inbound from executive recruiters, the way to think about it is, are they real executive recruiters, right? And so how do you know, right? So the filter is, right, effectively who's paying, right? And so there is a class of, so short answer is don't pay for services, right? The true executive recruiters, let's start there. The true executive recruiters are basically trying to build a portfolio of executives that they shop around to a set of companies and relationships that they have. So if you're an executive recruiter, your job is to get to know senior executives, both in HR and operations, operational like the CEO and things like that, in a portfolio of companies, and then to know personally a whole bunch of really good candidates. And then you're a matchmaker. That's what you're doing. And the way you get paid is when a company has a role, you find them the candidate gets in, you get paid by the company, typically a year's salary. Like they're big packages, especially for senior level people, right? So that's the classic executive recruiter. So if that is the type of person that is calling you, that's great because that's where you want to be. You want to be somebody that they think they can place, that they're like, wow, if I can get you a new role, it'll be great for you. And of course, great for me because I will get paid a lot of money because you're going to get paid a lot of money, right? That's the idea. So if you're getting calls from people, like, and that's typically like if you're in the C-suite, that's the world that you live in, right? And then there's this bridge, right? As you're kind of going up in your career, you get people who are recruiters. If they're recruiters for a company, they're their retained search or something like that. That's the other one where a company has hired somebody to go find people. Again, they're looking around. They're like, hey, I've been retained. They typically say this by a company. Sometimes they'll tell you the name. Sometimes they won't tell you the name in the beginning to find them a new VP of engineering, whatever it is, right? So as long as that is the model, that they are basically being paid by somebody else and to find talent, they found your talent, they want to talk to you, I would talk to them. There are other models where, again, the other model that's not paid is more of a directory, right? They're trying to collect as many names as possible, and so that they have a full list of people. This typically happens in more lower levels, like a bank of coders or a bank of sort of project managers or things like that. Is it helpful? I mean, it's not harmful, but again, you're kind of just a number. There's not a lot of personalization there. And then there are places that will help place you, and often there is a cost to join or some sort of payment that you have to make. If you have to make a contribution to their thing, then you are basically how they make money, which means it's not really about executive recruiting, right? So that's the basic filter: is if they are getting paid by the company and they found your talent, they want to talk to you, in general, take that. If they're asking if you want to be part of a network, if they're asking if you want to do this, and you have to effectively pay for it, you're the product, right? That's not the classic executive recruiter. So I would avoid those, right? So that's the simple filter: is who's paying for this? How do they make their money? If you can figure out how they make their money, then you want to make sure that you're on the right end of that deal. That's the idea. All right, so that's what to do if you get a quote unquote executive recruiter to come. Next question is thoughts or recommendations on the interested in working with us in the future LinkedIn feature. So this is where you go to a company and there's, I forget exactly what the button says, but there's a button that basically says interested in working here or interested in, it's like following the company or interested in being engaged here. Um, should you click that? And in general, yes, if you want to work there, like click it and it's helpful. The reason it's helpful is because of what LinkedIn is trying to do. So will it actually be helpful? We don't know. But what LinkedIn is trying to do is, the recruiting process is kind of broken right now. And if you're applying for jobs, you know this, which is every job gets like 1,000 people applying, right? Tons of resumes. A lot of the resumes are insta applies. There's all the agents now that's like, as soon as a job goes up, they'll slap your resume on there, which means, of course, no customization, no. So there's a lot of garbage that gets in there, which is very frustrating for recruiters. LinkedIn makes half of its money on its recruiting platform, right? I think the other half is from advertisement, some of it from you and me, like we do sales. I mean, if we do premium, stuff like that, but like most of it is the recruiter platform, right? So if you do Sales Navigator, right, that's like a $99 a month kind of thing. If you do the recruiter platform, I forget exactly, but it's like 10,000 a year, 15,000 a year. So that's where they make their money. And so what they're trying to do is make it easier and easier for people to find people, adding features. And so what happens is somebody goes, I want a VP of engineering in the New York area. So they type that in. So it's a search engine, right? They type that in a recruiter. It says 25,000 people match yours, right? And then within that, they'll say 10,000 people or 2,000 people are highly skilled at engineering, right? This is their recommendation engine where you're trying to get endorsements. So they'll give you that filter, 2,000. Of that, 500 people are interested in working with your company. So they give it as a filter that lets the recruiter just narrow down from like 25,000, it's always some huge number, to something much more reasonable. And so that's why you want to do it, is because if a recruiter is searching for a role using LinkedIn Recruiter, LinkedIn has all these flags and they do it for you. If you ever can, just watch the demo of the recruiter package that you can get. And their job is to make it easier to find candidates. And so they add all these little, oh, follow me, or interested in working in this company, or highly skilled. All these things that they add are all filters that you can then use, or the recruiters can use, to narrow down the pool, right? So I'm not a recruiter. I don't know how much they do use it, but conceptually, if you say you can go through 25,000 people or 500 people, people are going to go to the 500 people, just natural human behavior. And if that's the filter they're using, then you want to be doing that. So that's why when LinkedIn pushes these features, they're pushing them to the recruiters. So you generally want to follow that, because if the recruiters are using them, you want to be part of that. So again, no harm. Like, I would definitely pick a few companies and say you're interested in working there. It will make it easier for a recruiter to find you if they're looking from that company. All right, next question. In the sales interview side, so what are the key differences in executive interviews? And obviously there's a whole course and everything else. You can talk about it. So if you ask me, what is the one thing that you want to think about in addition to all the stuff we talk about in the community? What's the one thing you want to think about, is that the executive role is a net new creation role. It is not a do the job role. It is a what should we do, and did you create something new, right? And so we talk about this all the time, which is that there are two kinds of jobs. So the execution jobs, which is get the job done, and then there are the what should we do, idea jobs, strategy jobs, resource allocation, things that executives do. Right. And so that's the main difference, is when you are an executive, it shouldn't be a I can do this job. If you're a VP of engineering, you don't basically take orders from your VP of product. I mean, you shouldn't. But if you come across and say, well, we get all the requirements, we build this thing, I manage a large system, manage operations, blah, blah, blah. You're just doing the job. So the question is, what did you add to the equation? What was your new idea? What was your innovative partnership? What was the thing that you came? Well, here's how I had this idea that we could do this much easier. And I came up with this whole thing, efficiency, save money. Or I partnered with the head of product and we came up with a new feature set. We did mobile, we did whatever, right? You need to be net adding to whatever your responsibilities are. It is not about doing the job. It is about improving the company through new ideas and then allocating the resources to actually get it done, right? But it is a different job. And so you want to make sure that you are focused on, what did you net add? How big and how wide was that, right? If it's within your team, that's good. If it was in a division, that's better. If it was enterprise wide, that's the best, right? So adding ideas. So just remember, it is not about just proving you can do the job. You really want to start to move into the world of, what did you add to the equation? What were your ideas? What were the innovation things? And couple that with the execution. But that's the main difference with an executive interview, is it is no longer just about quote unquote doing the job. You need something else. Okay. Now we'll go to an executive presence question. And this one was actually my coaching call, but I'll kind of give you the scenario. So it's like, my boss asked me to go on a trip that I told him I couldn't do. I believe I'm up for a promotion. Was that a mistake? So that was the question that was asked to me, is like, well, he said, hey, can you fly over to Germany and do this meeting? And, I just can't, basically stuff going on, like I couldn't do it. And he was okay with that, but I think I'm up for promotion. Like, was that a mistake? And I wanted to bring this here because it's a really good example of, kind of zooming out. I use this term all the time. You want to zoom out and look at the ecosystem that you're working in, right? And so if you have a boss, the scenario is, if you have a boss that wants to promote you, what's the job? The job of the boss is to get you promoted. How do they do that? They have to convince everybody else that you are ready for promotion, even if they believe it. Especially the more senior levels, they can't just promote you, right? You need this ecosystem to agree. And so your boss needs evidence of you doing things that other people would recognize as a promotable capability, right? And so any one scenario is not going to derail you unless, like, again, if it's really bad, that's one thing. But like in this case, okay, you didn't do this trip, that's fine. But my guess was that that was a story that could have been told to other people. So, hey, could you go to Germany for a week? Yep, jumped on it, went there, and then the boss can tell his or her peers, hey, is so and so ready for promotion? Well, yes, right? Did you see what happened? We had this issue, he can handle it, right? He flew over there, he took care of it, it was great. He's looking for examples where he can demonstrate that you are ready, right? And so it's just this, it was an interesting sort of scenario, but the lesson here is you need to make your job, your boss's job, easy to promote you. And it can't just be, hey boss, I'm great, I'm great, I'm great. And your boss goes, yes, you're great. That's not the whole puzzle. The whole puzzle is, how is your boss going to convince the rest of them? So, and this is where, and again, this goes broader back to some of the stuff we talk about the community, but like, this is why the easiest one is to, you go convince those people, right? You go talk to them, go add value to them. And then there's 2, 3, 4, 5 people who all want you promoted. That's the best case scenario. But if you don't have that, the second best thing is to give your boss ammunition as to why you should get promoted that will resonate with these people, right? So you need to be feeding things that are not just local, but that will resonate with people outside of your division, right? So again, it's this whole theme of, okay, there's a band of people that are going to have to agree. You want to get them on your side. The best way to do it is person, but if not, you want to arm your boss. So again, this was just a scenario that in my mind was more about arming the boss with stories about this individual to make sure that they could get promoted. But that's the idea, right? So think about it in the broader way. If you're trying to get promoted and you're trying to up your presence, right, you're actually trying to find stories that will be shared among the executive team. And they need to be not just, hey, you're doing a good job. It needs to be something more interesting than that and more differentiated. So that's what you're trying to do there. Okay. All right. And then last question for today, in the executive results category, how can I tell if I'm being proactive enough? Right. So again, you're trying to move into the executive ranks, you're trying to have executive results. Am I being proactive enough? Because this is that balance, right? There's all this day job stuff you got to do, and then you're supposed to also do the strategy stuff as well. So how do you know if you're doing enough of the strategy stuff? And so one simple example or test that you can ask, which can be helpful, is every time your boss asks you for something, ask yourself, could I have thought of that first? Right? Could I have done that before they asked? Because that's the goal, is whenever they look down, like if they're in their organization, and whenever they look down the org chart, they're thinking things, and you want to get them the information before they have to ask for it, right? So sometimes there's like, oh, we had this meeting at the board, there's a new project, I want you to come and take it. Could you have predicted that? In general, no, right? You don't have access to the information, you're not part of that meeting. But if there's ever an ask that's like, sort of not the worst case, but like a bad scenario is your boss comes and say, hey, whatever happened to that thing we talked about a month ago, right? That was a mistake on your end, right? If they say, whatever happened to that thing that I asked you about, that means that you didn't ask, uh, sorry, that means that you didn't ask uh, soon enough, right? So you had this thing that sort of came up, it was mentioned, you either forgot about it, or you didn't think it was a priority, and then the boss came back and said, whatever happened, right? And that's something that you want to make sure that you fix by writing down, like figure out what was wrong with the system, right? Basically, your boss had something. So this is the idea: is when your boss asks you something, could I have preempted this and given it to them 24 hours before, right? And it's like, hey, what's going on? Could you give me a quick update on the outage, or a quick update on the progress of this project? If they ask you that question, you want to ask, why do they need that information? And your job is to figure out how to get that to them right beforehand, right? And so, well, you asked this project, that's kind of random. Like, I wasn't thinking he was going to ask about it. You zoom out and say, why? Oh, because he's going to the monthly whatever meeting, which is tomorrow. So he's obviously prepping for that meeting. And that's why he asked me about this project. So then what do you do? Again, this is advanced stuff. But then what do? Is you say, hey, boss, or hey, boss's executive assistant, or something like, what's the cadence of these meetings? Oh, they're every month. Okay, so when's the next one? Then you know that, okay, in a month from now, it's probably gonna ask the same thing. So you want to go and say, hey, boss, I know you have the so-and-so meeting coming up. Here's a quick summary of the project in case that's helpful, right? And now you've beaten them to the punch, right? And so if you want to be seen as proactive, turn it into a system, right? This is kind of the theme I always have, but it's like turn it into a system. And so the system here is every time or most times that you're asked for something, ask yourself, could I have predicted it? If the answer is no, cool, that's something. But if the answer is, yeah, I could have if I had known what. And then the question is, what was the trigger? Why is your boss asking about this now? You kind of add that to your system. And then what you get into is this habit of feeding your boss information right before they're going to ask. And then you become seen as amazingly proactive. And all it takes is a little bit of detective work. So that's the idea. So hope that helps. Be more proactive. Proactive is absolutely a good thing because the best performers are those who magically generate value and information in a way that doesn't take the time and energy of the executive you work for. Because where's the executive supposed to spend their time? Up and out. They're not supposed to spend it down and in, right? In terms of operations, that's your job, right? To make sure everything goes well. They should be focused on, you know, clients and strategy and all this kind of stuff. And so if you can feed them information such that there's always value coming out of this thing, right? They don't really have to do much. There's value coming out from you all the time. The information they need is there. New project ideas come. It's all great. They will love you. And chances are that's a very fast path to promotion. All right, so those are questions for this week. Hope that was useful. As always, if you have any questions, drop me a DM or just let me know, and I will answer them in the next week's call. All right, everybody, see you in the community, and have a great week.